Hello, everyone. Today we have Robin with us. Robin comes with a lot of background around QA, test automation, and he is into many diverse roles, which we'll see. But before I introduce Robin, I think he will do a better job than me. Robin, why don't you give us a quick turnaround?
Yeah, starting. Abhinav, first of all, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me on this session. Quick introduction will not make it boring and long. My name is Robin, 15 plus years of experience into diverse roles in product engineering and applied AI. I interestingly started my journey as a sales executive. I used to sell personal loans door to door, went on
Hmm.
to being a QA person, DevOps engineering, full stack engineering management, then product engineering and applied AI management across various geographies, time zones, and companies ranging from 80 people to 8,000 people. That's about me.
Okay. Very nice, very nice. So tell me about the sales thing. How did you started in sales and how did you transition into that QA thing?
Yeah, also, there are more interesting roles. I've also been a lecturer at an engineering college, and I cannot sit idle at home, which I'm doing right now, very tough. However, right after my school days, my college joining was delayed a bit. So I tried my hand at sales. And then when you are just passed out of school, nobody would make you the head of sales. So you become the sales executive and you sell personal loans and people shoo you away. Yeah, they don't want to talk to you.
But that must have sharpened your sales skill. Like everybody probably have to sell themselves within their organization. So do you see a benefit
Yeah,
of that?
definitely. I think all the roles that I've done, ranging from sales to lecturer to QA to DevOps to engineering, product or applied AI, everything has added like a new sword or shield in my armory. And to your point, sales is one of the toughest jobs on earth. But then also once you do it, you exactly know how to talk about what and then when to pause exactly.
True, true. So can we say sales and both lecturer roles, they sharpened your storytelling part because in sales also you have to tell a story.
Yeah, exactly. And that too, I was selling personal loans. Like nobody likes the personal loans. Selling
True.
credit cards is easier. So then
Right.
you have to model the story. You have to sell the personal loan for their daughter's marriage or for that, US trip.
True, true, true. So then you came into QA, and what I see on your LinkedIn, you spent some time like as a QA engineer in Accenture,
Hmm.
then Happiest Mind, and eventually evolved like as a test lead there.
Hmm.
Then I think the next company was East Turtle, where you actually are into a management role,
Mm.
and then senior engineering manager, and then VP of product and technology at ProArt.
Mm.
So do you see that as a natural progression that every QA personnel, they eventually become a product manager, project manager, or a head of engineering?
I think that's a very interesting question. And at one point in my career, one of my managers told me that Robin QA is a terminal role. What that means is that you can only grow so much when you are a QA. You would have
Hmm.
to shift track. I think that is 50% true, 50% false. 50% true because I personally went through that journey and then I switched tracks based on my own interest.
Hmm.
But then 50% false because I know a lot of very efficient and effective QAs in my friendly network who are 15, 20 years and still acting as a QA. And interestingly, when they QA your website or app, you exactly know that the quality will be 99% awesome. So it is based on that person's inception and perception of the role and environment that they want to do. And nobody should tell you that QA is a terminal role. No role is terminal. You could be the cook at home or at your local restaurant or at a Michelin star restaurant.
Hmm.
So nothing like a terminal role.
True, true. I think, and that's I see in the programming side also, because I see many guys who are 15, 20 years, they're still very low into code. And when they write code and do things, it's a different finish altogether.
Right? Yeah, they
So
would
what
write
is your,
code like poem.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely it's a artistic thing then.
100% of it. I have friends in the community. Okay, I'll take names and shout out to like Simon Stewart. So Simon
Hmm.
Stewart invented Selenium WebDriver
Hmm.
and went through various organizations. And I totally respect him for where he is and still contributing to the community, still working hard at that problem, and still staying humble and grounded. My school teachers remind me of this thing that as the trees get more fruits on them, they get more bent.
So
So
humble,
we
staying
should be like
humble
them.
is key.
Humbleness. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
True. But again, I think the core question stays, as your manager said, typically there is a fear in every technical person. Like if I stay too technical, I will be still limited to a given technical role, though I am the sharpest, let's say QA guy or sharpest technical person in any role. So what do you again see as a progression? Is it good to transition to managerial role or as a
Mm,
product lead, or
yeah.
what is the right direction?
I think it depends on that person's aspiration. If I just love staying in the terminal and VS Code, and I would rather not talk to people and I would solve this technical problem, that is what is keeping me happy and keeping me fed. Like,
Hmm.
gets me the money to get food and then keeps me occupied and happy. That is what people should chase, not the titles and the roles. Because eventually the titles and roles are just outward facing. They don't mean anything. What
Hmm.
really matters is their expertise and passion. Similarly, you don't want to code so much, it's okay. No judgment. But then you should be good at the other aspects, product management, QA management, or having that critique mindset, or maybe talking to people, and then build on top of that.
You're
A
right.
lot of times we are taught that you should work on your weaknesses. But what I feel is that over the years, you should also work on sharpening your strength. That is where you gain the leverage.
Right, right. I can't remember the quote, but it's like if I have 5 hours to do the job, I will spend three to sharpen my axe.
Exactly. Yeah, right. So the same
Right.
thing to that career question. If people want to grow into management, they can grow into the QA manager role, product manager, project manager role. If they want to stay technical, they can grow into the test architect role, DevOps roles, or principal engineer roles. And it's up to them rather than somebody
Mm.
telling it should come from the inside, not from the outside.
Right, right. But one thing which I definitely see is QA people, like in my own company, we tell people that if you are like good communicator and you
Mm,
want to talk to more clients and you can do a bit of people part, they actually become a good engineering manager, because I see that role into
mm,
your profile also.
exactly.
Because QA actually touches businesses into a different aspect. Like developer and technical person, he has a little narrow mindset. Okay, I have done my job, I'm good, but QA then takes a business angle. So what do you think of that thing? Like, are QA people better as product leads and engineering manager?
See, I am biased to say yes because I'm a QA at heart. But I think if we try to quantify that solution, QA is definitely bring in the critique or the quality perspective. And see, that is what brings value. I can buy a MacBook or I can buy that other laptop.
Mm-hmm.
But why am I doing that or why am I paying a premium is for the quality. Same thing applies to any commoditized product from milk to coffee to bread or anything.
Mm-hmm.
The raw material cost is basically the same. It's coming from the same place or similar. But the finished product quality is what people pay for. And that is why QAs can bring in that additional lens, that third eye to see the quality of the product and then manage the product or the team in a much better fashion.
Right. And QAs are, I think, in more better position to put their perspective, because they have to put their perspective a lot. They have to
Mm,
explain that this thing is really an issue at times, because neither the management or even developers, they are never in any mood to accept anything is an issue.
yeah.
So they have to fight or sell the point that, okay, yes, this makes sense to me. So I think that helps a lot.
Yeah, 100%. So I've done both development and QA roles. And
Hmm.
let's say when I'm a developer or when you are a developer, you get this Jira story, and once you develop it, developing it itself was like a research, like 4 days of Stack Overflow and Chat GPT nowadays or whatever, and then finally you are done.
Hmm.
And if somebody comes and says, "Oh, no, you actually built this one thing," I'm already tired and broke from building that
Right,
feature. I would
right,
rather not do any more changes. But then to your point, the QA has to really push from a business angle. Let's see, if we do this one more thing, it will bring in this 5x value. It will just unlock that. So I think fighting is a strong word, but then a healthy discussion and debate ensues. And hopefully people understand that if we do this, it will bring value for the customer. We are not in this for our own personal goals to some extent, maybe, but it's for the company goal. We are working together as a football team to score that against the competitors.
true, true. And the reason I'm pushing here is not to offend my developer friends. The reason is I see that terminal kind of point coming up to many QA folks. So I think you are better positioned because you understand business well. You can debate, again is a wrong word, but you can actually put your point forward. Developers typically are
Yeah,
like, I've said, now I'm done. If
yeah,
you want, you take it. Otherwise, I don't care.
yeah.
So,
It will
but
happen in the next release.
right. And as you said, like QA actually sees that this will impact business in this way. And at times beyond their story and their epic, they see other epics also. So they have a
Yeah,
little wider horizon of the whole thing happening in the product. So you are having an option to be an engineering manager, a product manager, or maybe a consultant as well. I think these days in Salesforce, QAs are going into consultant and architect roles also. By the way, on Salesforce side, what
Yeah.
do you think? It's a general QA thing which we discussed. Now let's say Salesforce QA. What do you see as a progression? How often
I
do you
think,
see them becoming CTA or solution architect?
yeah, definitely. I think that's a very good question. Interestingly, in the whole Salesforce ecosystem, if anybody observes it closely, Salesforce has personas for developers and certifications in education, PD1, PD2, whatever, and admins, Salesforce
Mm-hmm.
certified administrator. And there is even one for BAs now, certified business analyst or
Mm-hmm.
other sales roles. Salesforce doesn't have any persona for QAs.
Valid point.
But interestingly, when you do a large scale implementation, as we did in one of my previous healthcare organizations, it does tend to broke. When you are writing those custom Apex classes and you're working with 3 other integration partners across a data lake and that HRMS system or that service implementation, you have to ensure that it works end to end. And that is something which is coming up in a lot of mature implementations now. So, for example, when Salesforce started for the first 3 years or so, it was good. But then as people started building more and more complicated implementations, they realized that they actually need QAs to test that out end to end. And that
True.
is, I think, the inception point for the Salesforce QA role, and therefore the tools and solutions and so on and so forth. Then that whole village started getting populated.
True. True. So again, coming to the question, let's say somebody is starting and or aspiring to be a Salesforce QA. What will
Mhm.
be your pick of certification? I think you made a very good point. There is no QA specific certification in Salesforce.
Yeah,
So if we talk about career path in terms of certifications, what 2 or 3 certifications you will put ahead?
I think I'm a strong supporter of the certified admin piece or the admin certification just for everybody, not
Mhm.
QAs or devs or anybody. I've also done
Mhm.
it. And what I realized is that it actually covers a very nice breadth and depth in some areas. So first and foremost, it gives you a very good overview of the whole platform and the solution as an offering. So I would definitely recommend that as the first one to anybody
And it's not
stepping into
easy
this.
one if somebody does that
It's
honestly.
difficult. Yeah. So I've done certification before the Salesforce admin one, and I'm like, yeah, this will be pretty easy, one weekend.
Right,
Then I took some mock exams. I'm like, yeah, no, this will take 4 weekends.
right. I mean, at times, from a developer standpoint, I find admin tougher than this
Then
dev
PD,
one.
yeah, you exactly know how to write that code or solve that technical question in PD1, but in the admin one, for that fake company, for that store to be implemented, what data pieces have to be done or modeling, that is complicated.
Right. That is complicated.
Yeah.
All right. So
So
what is the
admin is
second
one.
one?
Yeah, admin is one. Certified business analyst, I have not done it, but I've seen the content. It looks promising. Again, we are QS, so we don't know until we do it.
Mm-hmm.
And the
Yeah.
third one is the Gen AI one. So I've done that as well. And
Okay.
that is definitely a very good starting point for anybody looking at Salesforce QA in the future. Because Salesforce has just started with the AI pieces. This will just become more and more ingrained into the whole system.
Okay. And what do you think about those consultant ones? Do they add up on the stack, like maybe Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, at least as starters?
Yeah, definitely. I think if somebody is working on that one implementation for that project or for that client, maybe they are doing Service Cloud implementation or Sales Cloud, they should definitely look at it. Because
Right.
interestingly, as you mentioned earlier, the role of QA is not just to test that one feature, but test it in conjugation with the other features and the larger platform implementation.
Right.
That is how they should have the eagle's vision and then catch the
Mm.
bugs on the ground.
True, true, true. Great. So I think this gave some perspective to the QA folks who are listening or watching to this podcast. Now, I think you have a really long career and started in 2009. That time the QA landscape must be different, and now we are in 2024. So how do you see that evolution? What are the major changes in manual and automation QA?
Okay, let's break that into 3 parts. So my
Mhm.
brain tends to work in bullet points. After many years of slide making and presentation, it's bullet points now.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, See, one is the overall industry perspective.
Mhm.
In 2009, making changes, pushing them to production, and then getting feedback and all was a lengthier cycle, more waterfall-ish than agile-ish,
Mhm.
right? So therefore, you have to do more planning upfront and then execution and then result and then back to the starting point, right? Therefore, also it was very people dependent. So to answer that question, first is the overall industry trend. The development cycles are becoming shorter and shorter. We are more agile, at least in theory. I don't know about everybody's project, but nonetheless, it is much shorter and the feedback loops are also shorter, therefore. So that is one. Second is the direct impact on the work which people do. People need to have shorter feedback cycles, shorter testing cycles, maybe more reliance on tools, maybe lesser clicking on the screen, maybe more automation, and therefore the career progression. So when I started, I joined Accenture as a tester and then moved into test automation and then so on and so forth. Somewhere in the middle, large tech companies like Microsoft and all, they just eliminated the manual tester role. They started having SDETs, software development engineering testing, or some of those roles. And now some companies don't even have QAs. They expect a developer to do the development, do peer reviews, good unit tests, also some integration and some end-to-end tests. So that is where the world is headed towards. And that is why people need to be more and more technical, more hands-on.
Okay, actually, that's good to know because the last part, one of my client is doing that with my developers. So they were initially confused at why we are doing this QA thing. And then I will not name the QA automation tool because we're not trying to promote anyone. They actually were trained on that. And then
Yeah.
they eventually started loving it that we wrote the code. Now we are building the automation scripts. And then it's pushed into the CI/CD and everything is working like a charm.
Yeah, exactly. I think that is what a lot of people are targeting. That move from manual to automation, and then can we do instant automation? Like in that 2 week average agile cycle, not just test it, but then also automate it and then add it to the CI/CD pipeline.
Okay, that's actually now an interesting point you made because do you see this is a new normal because automation, as you said, like they are, I will not come to the AI angle so soon, but like you can use AI also to generate the things. The tools are getting smarter, so that kind of skill which is needed with Selenium, let's say in past, is not now required. Like developer typically with maybe no Selenium experience can do that kind of thing. Do you see that
Yeah,
as the new normal way to, what do you call,
yeah, I
automation
would.
of QA? Or
Yeah, no. I think to add on to that point, I would say it is the aspirations for many organizations. Suddenly, a large old system in the bank cannot just transform into this thing. Also, interestingly, with Salesforce as an example, we have releases twice a year, and then Salesforce themselves will make platform level changes on the UI. I think the last release document I read was 160 or 200 pages long, which actually broke a lot of things on the UI. So somebody would
True,
have to then spend the maintenance effort on that. So you can write Selenium all you want, but then it will
right.
break left and right.
True. So how do you see the classical roles? Like we used to have manual QA.
Yeah.
What is the progression for them now?
Yeah, interestingly, it depends on the maturity of that organization. Let's talk into these 3 bullet points. Let's say there is a small team which has one developer, one QA, one product manager. They have to not only do the design, development, but also testing and automation. So it's on to them. Now, generally, time is the only constraint. So the testing gets left behind and automation gets left behind by a way lot, right? So the maturity curve is slower for them. In the middle, you have, let's say, these 500 member companies, high scale, high growth. They are getting into this. Maybe they had a tester, maybe they had this 3 member team, but now they are planning about automation and all. And then, let's say you have enterprises, 1,000, 10,000 member companies who have solid bodies and solid roles defined. To your parent question, it depends on the maturity of that organization. Where are they and what do they aspire? Do they really want to do instant automation? Does their team support that? Or they just want to chug along and touch things by hand, ensure that everything's working fine?
Okay. So that's, I think this question again is twofold. One is from the business side, which you answered.
Correct.
That how does business wants to take care of the, you can say as time is the biggest currency, the time to deliver and time to go live. And also from business, there is another angle of team. Like how do they want to progress their team from manual QA to maybe consultant or whatever they want. But I think if let's say some manual QA people are listening to this podcast, how should they plan if their company is not planning something of that sort for them?
I think a very close friend recently asked me the same question, and I have a personal answer. The one thing which I did was that while I was, let's say, a manual tester at Accenture, and neither the client nor the company had any incentive to move me into automation, I just started doing it on my own. 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. Saturdays and Sundays.
Right. So learn some
Yeah.
scripting, learn what is the
Yeah.
latest, and there is no,
Yeah,
I think,
exactly. So,
shortage of resources these days.
no,
True, true,
exactly. You have a chat GPT as your personal tutor at your
true.
fingertips. So you should really have that fire inside, and yeah, I will go and do it, and I will make the change for myself. Is the spirit people need. They don't need to be told that you should do this. It
Right.
should come from the inside, not from the outside.
True, true. And I hope people are listening to this thing. So manual QA we covered. You have to think because manual QA role will be diluted because developers will be doing that automation. Tools will be simplified. So it is not that hard for them to be an automation guy as compared to before, like where you have to learn the Selenium scripting and maybe little bit of programming. What other role changes do you see from 2009 to this stage, especially in the QA zone?
Yeah, definitely. I think that role is getting a little diluted, or maybe distributed is a better word, because now the
Mhm.
product manager is also doing some testing, developers doing it.
True.
The client also, for example, is using it and giving feedback real time. You have widgets on the UI where they can report
Mhm.
issues and all, right? The second change is the mindset. Like when we graduated from college, we had no clues about Selenium or test automation or anything. People
Mhm.
have that wide exposure now, and people are starting really early on. So the race is on. You
Mhm.
can be stuck in one thing, or you can move really fast and beat those folks. So somebody
Mhm.
asked me recently, should we be afraid of the young crop? I'm like, you should not be afraid. You should be friends with them.
Mhm.
Also, they are not going toward the same goal as you are. You have experience and hands-on knowledge or battle scars from working with clients. The only problem is if you stop learning, then it becomes a problem. So everybody's headed towards the same goal, and you should be sharp enough to get those skills. So to your question, that is one thing which I'm seeing. And then last but not the least, what I'm also seeing is that with the advent of ChatGPT or some of these Gen AI solutions, the velocity of development has increased manyfold. But how do we increase the velocity of testing is the question mark. So there would be some answers, I think, which will come as time passes by. But that is something which people are now struggling with. You got a GitHub Copilot, but you don't have a GitHub testing Copilot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, coming to the same thought, I'm just juggling myself. So okay, manual QA developers, these all are intermingled now, like even PMs.
Yeah.
Everybody is doing testing, and QA automation is so easy that everybody can put up a script or record a macro, and that
Mm,
is automatically updated with the Salesforce changes, as you're saying. Like
mm,
if there are DOM elements which are updated, it's taken care of. So at one point we're talking about the evolution into test architect and those kind of roles. Do you see
mm.
still that is a progression, or one should think more like a PM, product manager, get into more business side of things rather than just planning to stay too much technical in this time?
Yeah, I think it could be both. So there is no right wrong answer. If I personally just love the quality space, which I do, I would just stick to that test architect role, for example.
Mhm.
Because even in this case, when this role is, let's say, getting distributed,
Mhm.
somebody would have to ensure that how Salesforce talks to Workday, talks to ServiceNow, talks to the Snowflake is all correct.
Mhm.
Is it the role of the principal architect? No, their role is on the implementation side or integration side. Therefore, is it the role of the QA manager or test architect? Maybe. Who counterbalances them and says that in the test strategy, you should not just think about this, you should also think about this. There should be a balancing act. But this aspiration to question the architecture or those decisions should come from the inside. If it is not
Mhm.
coming from the inside and you would love to be a people person, as you mentioned, product manager, project management, TPM roles, BA roles, would
Mhm.
be a great fit. I'm not saying would be, could be, depends on that person's aspirations.
Great, great. So what we will take away is 2009 to 24 roles are again distributed. Test architect is still an option. Again, you have to have that curiosity and I think zeal to be an expert in that zone. Otherwise, if you're a people person and want to do more business side, then the other roles are open as well. Any other significant changes you see in that 2009 versus to 2024 era?
I think tooling is something we have moved from these pretty old tools like HPQC, Quality Center, and HPQTP to these modern age tools, which are just part of the whole pipeline. Earlier, you would have to spin up those instances, and I still remember in one of our systems at Accenture, we had a post-it note which said, do not turn this off. Test automation is running. Now that is not required. It is just part of that Jenkins job somewhere. The progression in technology has impacted that role or that position as well. Now you don't
Oh,
need Robin to take a look at that mainframe system and then run tests on top of them on the desktop. It is running somewhere. So that technological shift is mind blowing.
for sure, for sure. Actually, about an interesting point. So if we talk about the tooling, so now we have different things like one is mobile, one is like still
Yeah.
people do desktop apps. There is API, and now we have SaaS platforms like Workday, Workato, ServiceMax, and each has own, I think, challenge or learning to how to approach that kind of testing. So if you have to put up a QA automation tool, I know you might have some bias or favorites, but let's say for mobile specifically, API, which one you will pick if we keep Salesforce aside for a second?
Yeah, I will. Okay. We'll not make this spicy and debatable. We'll keep it vanilla and sweet,
Okay,
like the ice cream. Yeah. So I am an open source contributor. So in public conversations, I would definitely prefer open source solution.
okay. Uh,
So for example, Appium or Selenium. I have contributed to the Selenium code base. Folks at Appium are very close friends in the community. And I think both of these projects are doing pretty awesome for the community and test automation or testing in general. So I would strongly recommend anybody who's watching this and exploring mobile testing and automation space to look at Appium. They have very good bindings, very friendly community. Or if you're looking at the web platform, then Selenium is the de facto. Not only is it old, it is stable and then performs cross-browser like no other open source tool.
Okay, okay. That's very nice. So if you now move to the SaaS zone, to which do you have tool for each SaaS product, or is there one tool which can kill all of them?
I think mostly SaaS is deployed as a web platform. So I would strongly recommend Selenium is the de facto standard there. There are newer ones like Playwright is by a private company or Cypress, which is paid offering and so on and so forth. But when people are doing SaaS automation, they should really be mindful that Selenium working on the WebDriver standard is the only one which simulates user actions like a real user on a real browser. Other
Okay.
ones inject JavaScript. It's not real automation. So be sensible, be mindful.
Okay. Now, lastly, we do work a lot on Salesforce. So if you have to pick tools for Salesforce, let's say top three choices, what will be those?
I think Salesforce DevOps Center is one which is new and green. So that is one for sure. If you're looking at the CI/CD, change set management, deployment side of things. Second is definitely Selenium. You have to do some maintenance, but it is a whole lot better than a lot of offerings. Also, it would help you to our earlier point, get your hands dirty with code a little. And third could be Workbench. So Workbench also helps you solve a lot of problems for Salesforce.
Okay.
So those
So
are my top three.
you're playing very safe. But let me ask it in a different way. Like, let's say there is ProVar, there is XLQ, there is Test Sigma. So how do you see these tools coming up? Like, I'm trying to ask this question on behalf of a QA engineer who is,
Yeah.
let's say, coming from a manual background, or let's say there is a business user who is now seeing the presentations from all the sales and marketing team, or maybe YouTube videos, all of them. Now still
Yeah.
confused, like which tool is good fit for what. So how will I don't want to like a singular name, but how can they make a decision here?
Yeah. No, 100%. I think your question is very valid, Abhinav, that people should have the rubric for comparing these tools, right? So I think there are three things in general, like we can make a whole table and an Excel sheet of, parameters and all. It boils down to three things. So first is the business use case. Are you only targeting Salesforce or is it Salesforce with these five other systems? Salesforce and ServiceNow and Workday and Oracle and that web app and your own mainframe system and some APIs and a database as well. So the target application is one thing, right? Second is cost. All tools come at a cost. Nothing is free apart from Selenium. Also, see, when I say cost, it is not just the cost of the license, the execution cost, the maintenance cost, the upgrades and updates cost, so on and so forth. So the tangible and intangible cost, right?
Sure.
And then third is that internal aspiration. How deep do I want to go? Do I want a no-code solution or a low-code solution or a pro-code or maybe something which has all three, four? Where do I see myself as a buyer or user persona? So I think that those are the three things. Like look at the business case, look at cost, function, tangible, intangible, and then personal aspiration.
Right, right. I think you made first point very interesting for me because typically I ask this question to everybody and they bring up learning curve as well, but never I think discuss this point that There might be API, there might be mobile, and there might be many other systems also. So which tool is possibly going to be a single solution or single QA automation thing for all of them, which probably is tough. I think nobody is doing it all.
Nobody. I think it's a coverage function. Like nobody's doing 100, but if somebody
Hmm.
doing 90 or is 79 good enough for me? Because then it's a balance.
Hmm.
Somebody who's doing 90 could be more costlier, could be more time taking, could have a longer learning curve. So do I live
Hmm.
with 79 and then can I manage the learning and the cost also?
Right.
Then I think somebody has to take that call.
So for tip for business or maybe the decision maker here is to put against the sales team all these options also, like my business need these also beyond Salesforce, not just Salesforce, because typically people at times just go with a singular mindset that I will just do automation for Salesforce, and then other IT teams come and say we have these things also,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Also, see, when I joined the Salesforce ecosystem as one of my previous employers, I felt that Salesforce has the sales cloud, marketing cloud, whatever. But then no company sells that. Companies have their own products. So therefore, they have a system of engagement and a system of record.
Hmm.
And they will have Oracle and they will have ServiceNow and they will have that Snowflake implementation and they will have their own product as well. So are you targeting one thing, two things, all of them? So people should make
Hmm.
that mindful call because you can buy a hammer, but then
Hmm.
once you buy a hammer, you should not make everything a nail.
Yeah, that's a very good point. We have not talked much about AI, and now everybody is excited about. So, which tool do you think, or how do you think AI is actually coming up in these tools? Does it really help?
I was recently doing some study on the business impact of AI, the real business impact. And two
Hmm.
things came about. So point number one is that companies which are building AI solutions are very positive about it. OpenAI mentioned that they did 70% automation for some client. GitHub Copilot publishes reports that they had 50-60% improvement in developer velocity. So
Hmm.
there is this one camp. The other camp is we are early, too soon to say, we don't know.
Hmm.
Now it depends on the audience. Where do they see themselves? Are
Okay.
you pro AI or are you no AI? But where I see myself is all of us are still learning. We have only scraped the surface of the true potential of generative AI only because ChatGPT was launched. It just opened people's eyes. I have played with those systems even before that and even with classical machine learning algorithms
Hmm.
which people don't talk a lot about because they are not in fashion. But with the advent of these systems like GPUs and compute, the journey is just getting started. I think of today's state as the first car which Ford had invented, the
Hmm.
T100 or T1000, because we have just moved from horses to cars. The
Hmm.
Ferraris and supercars are yet to come.
Right. So, what are the use cases of AI in your point of view? Like, if we talk about tools like ProR, XLQ, Test Sigma, if they put up AI, how will they benefit? And if we go beyond that, let's say somebody, these are actually two questions. One is from the tool standpoint, and one is from the QA engineer's standpoint, what they can do with other AI, like let's say ChatGPT for an example.
Yeah. Okay. So let's answer the second one first because that is more important, and then the
Hmm.
tools one.
Hmm.
See, as a QA member, there are multiple use cases I can explore with, let's say, ChatGPT or generative AI as an example. Again, generative AI is just a section of AI, and
Hmm.
there is classical machine learning and prediction algorithms and so on and so forth.
Hmm.
However, in the context of the fashionable topic of Gen AI, people should first look at the learning aspect. Can they learn how to drive this car which is just invented? They were driving horses. Can they drive a car now? So they should learn some parts prompt engineering, some parts of the internals of these models, some parts how to control hallucination, how to build these trust layers and guardrails, right? So that is one, the learning aspect. Second is actually using the generative AI potential. Many people didn't realize that recently ChatGPT started doing two things. One, you could upload a document, which was in the paid tier, now it's in the free tier.
Hmm.
Second, now you see a small pop-up which says memory updated. You ask it like
Yeah.
three things, and then it says memory updated. It knows more about you. It knew it earlier as well, now it's more transparent, right? So people should start using that for their own advantage. Can they build test cases? Can they build test data? Can they build the whole test strategy? Can they run the test and then summarize it into a report and then send it to the stakeholders? Because that will make more sense. If you are the VP of product engineering, you are not so much bothered about how many test cases were run. You are more bothered that where were the bugs and what are the quality issues that we should focus on.
Right.
right?
Right.
So from the test design to selection to execution and reporting, each stage can benefit from GenAI. And that brings us to the first question. What can the tools companies do? Look at the full journey is the answer.
Mhm.
Don't just slap AI for the sake of it, because everybody can like actually smell it in their marketing now.
Yeah, it seems like that after you see that demo, like, okay, we got it. It's not that thing. But I think you made an interesting point about the QA engineer. So does it means like prompt engineering is a real thing? Because as you said, like ChatGPT has features, and then there is a way to talk to ChatGPT or any basically LLM. So what are your thoughts on
Yeah.
that?
I think prompt engineering is the UX for large language models today. For example, the earlier question you asked, what are the changes from 2009 to 2024, right? When we started testing and coding, it was all HTML and there was some CSS. You just slap it and
Mm.
hopefully, a link and a button comes together. But now you have these drop downs and related lists and calendar widgets and these and see amazing animated UIs. What ChatGPT did is they just pushed us back into the 1990s. Now again, you're talking to a small text box.
Right. It's like a command
You don't
line.
have buttons, right? It is
Right.
all command lines. The command
Right.
is in English, but it's just that text box,
Right.
right?
Right. Very, very
So you
good
should know how
point.
to use Vim. This is like Vim of, or this is like literally text editor for large
Right.
language models.
Right.
Will
Right.
it have buttons, Robin? Yes, it will definitely grow. When we don't know. But today you get a text editor and you need to know how to use it. You need to
Right.
know how to exit Vim and then do the other things, or how to do CD or make directory or whatever.
Right. I think I agreed a lot to this point because I've seen Photoshop doing that. Like Mid-Journey came, it required you to actually generate the whole image. But now you, let's say, I put my background, but I don't like this lamp. So I can change it to something like hanging lamp, or
Yeah.
it's easy to replace, and I don't need to write a whole prompt. I can just select and just simply type, just change this part only. So this is a more GUI kind of thing rather than a
Yeah.
Discord bot in which I have to type the whole thing.
Right.
So,
So they moved from that text input to, let's say,
right,
a button now. You can click a button.
right.
Hopefully you will have drop downs and the analogous elements in that UX pretty soon. But people are making that. And with Gen AI, in 2.5 years, it is already feeling like we've been living in this world for 5 years now. So the
Yeah.
growth is 50% faster or 100% faster in some cases.
Right. So does this means that we will have specialized chatbots or like specialized? I think ChatGPT already has that kind of thing. Now you can build your own bots, and then it will be a QA specific thing which has buttons, as you're saying. Like, okay, you put your use case file or stories, upload them, then it will give you, and it will talk and show the UX in that particular way. Maybe lawyer, they will have a different kind of interface or their own thing, because one thing to do all kind of industries and businesses might be little tough to do.
Yeah, exactly. So again, the large language models themselves are like these CPU cores or, these, let's say, API calls. What you build out of them is totally up to that application developer. And to your point, NVIDIA CEO made a point sometime earlier this year
Hmm.
that today we are in the age of static UIs. We have to
Hmm.
code it and then the consumer consumes it and then it is the same for everybody. So it's like there is one size of t-shirt, everybody wears the same t-shirt.
Right.
But we'll go into this era, as you mentioned, where we have generative UI. The UI will generate pixel by pixel based on the user's preferences. And it's happening on the fly because it knows my preferences and now it can generate that for me.
Correct. All right. So I think this is going deep for tip for our QA friends. So they should actually have some familiarity with prompt engineering. Anything else would you like to add? Like,
Yeah, I see prompt engineering as the third one.
mhm.
First, they should understand what's the large language model. Very
Okay.
few people actually go into that direction. And as a QA, you should know the underlying technology on which you are building other apps and systems so that you can test it in that way. So that is
Mm.
step one. Then step two is understanding the implementation integration with your domain or application or business. Then third is, let's say, prompt engineering and how to work with large language models, how to do prompt injections, or how to do the positive and negative test automation for applied AI. But rather than starting at third point, I would urge folks to start at the first point.
First understand what the LLM is and how does it works. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
And for our Salesforce folks, they don't need to understand LLM probably, or will they?
I think they should. So what I'm reading is Salesforce is launching Agentforce later this year at Dreamforce. And to build that agent, you need to know what are the goals and missions and how to instruct it to do that task on your behalf. So you should not become like an expert at AI and LLMs and prompt engineering. But I think just like coding started as a development role, but then coding is expected to be known by almost every college graduate.
True.
Similarly, LLMs, prompt engineering, all of this is new and fast for everybody today. Few years later, it will not only be embedded in the systems everywhere, it will also be embedded deep into the education curriculum and the mindsets of people.
Yeah, I can see that happening. Probably every mobile has an AI chip, and
Yeah.
yeah, it will be democratic and very easily accessible. Just
Yeah.
I think the new technology thing. But coming to the agent force, what do you think of this Dreamforce? What else they will announce, or what are your expectations from?
I think one is Agent Force. I've signed up for the virtual sessions and everything. I'm super excited about the AI agent space. And not just in a very um, research context, also in the business application context. I think it will change the world for better. We are just getting started. The other thing which I'm expecting is these large language models themselves require a lot of data. So multiple enhancements on the data cloud side. And then one key bug or a feature, depending on who sees it, is the hallucination angle. So I see better guardrails, better trust layers coming up this year.
Okay. You bought the data point, and there's always a challenge, I think, with QA people because developers typically test with a very low amount of data, but QA has to cover up a lot of personas and generate data for a lot of people. Do you think AI can simplify that job by mass producing data based on use cases, or have you seen any tool doing that already?
ChatGPT is one tool. Again, we'll keep it simple and vanilla and sweet. But
Hmm.
I think the bigger question is, can AI solve it? I
Hmm.
personally feel it can. That word Gen AI is for generating these things and generating strings and generating text is a really strong hand for Gen AIs or LLMs. So I personally feel it can solve it. See, the real crack happens when you have a related pick list and it should be dependent on a certain value, which is deep inside the system and only Abhinav and Robin know about that business route.
Hmm.
Will it penetrate that? To know that, keep watching the Abhinav podcast.
Thank you. But I think the interesting thing is I was talking about this thing with my team also. That okay, let's say we use ChatGPT and we try to generate data, but only problem with all the LLMs is they are actually charging based on the tokens. Let's say I want to generate 100,000 rows, I will burn
Yeah.
out my dollars like anything.
Yeah.
So that's where the
I think,
struggle is.
yeah, a lot of people, when they think of LLMs, they just look at the OpenAI's APIs or Anthropic's Claude model and all. One of the experiments which I ran and found fruitful was
Mhm,
that for these simpler use cases where you need to
mhm,
generate the first name, last name, string, phone numbers, some drop down date values, hopefully on a form. Let's say
mhm,
the account creation flow on Salesforce. You can achieve it cheaply and at scale by hosting your own small language model or an open source large language model on Amazon's infra. Again, not saying we should use Amazon, but for that matter, any cloud infra can
mhm.
provide you that small setup, maybe a larger EC2 one, maybe with one GPU. You can run
Right.
your own implementation and then use those APIs to do all this at very cheap prices.
That's very interesting because this LLM is not supposed to be super smart. It has a very limited set of use cases, and yeah, that can
Yeah,
be done.
exactly. So you can do an SLM, like a small language model. You don't need a canon for everything.
I'm building one.
Hopefully, maybe on this laptop, something's right.
Oh man, okay, looking forward to it. Actually, that is a very good idea if somebody's working on that. Maybe good
Yeah,
for open source. Let's see
yeah,
who does
exactly.
that.
I think the whole idea is, can we make a dent in the universe of quality? I think in my head at least, I've seen the journey since 2009, so I'm an expert by no means. I'm
Mhm.
as dumb as they get. But the point is, quality has just stopped progressing. And with the cost and time pressure, we are even regressing. For example, we had the CrowdStrike issue earlier this year, which just stopped the world from spinning. So somebody has to make a dent. Somebody needs to take that mantle. I'm not saying me, maybe the QA folks, maybe the engineering teams, but we really need to bring back quality to software application. With OpenAI's large language models and the other ones, it becomes more complicated. Testing ChatGPT is the toughest testing any team could do.
True, true. I can't imagine.
Right? Yeah. So that is why we should do it for the betterment of quality for the ecosystem as a whole.
Do you know any QA folks at OpenAI? I don't know what their life will be like.
I think their life is very tough. So OpenAI has this whole red teaming concept. So you try to break into the model, you do prompt injections, you ask it things like how to build a bomb, and it should not answer correctly. It used to answer correctly last year, not this year. So
Okay.
that team did a good job. But yeah, I think that's so model eval is what it is called technically, model evaluations or system eval.
Mm-hmm.
Very quickly growing field, and that is where the real potential for innovation lies. That okay, you can build a large language model, but how do you test it negatively or positively?
All right. So I think we are moving towards the last part of this episode, and you wrote a book as well, and that again is a different kind of skill set and mindset job. So how was that experience like?
I think two parts. So one was I think I lost some more hair on my head during that process because I had heavily underestimated the effort. When I started, you have to send in a table of contents, and I was super confident that yeah, we'll finish this in 1 year. But then you realize that no, this is one of those software projects wherein
True.
you think you'll write the API overnight, but it doesn't work like that. And
Right.
I think it was a very good journey outside. I got to meet a lot of people from the community, including again a big shout out to Alba Rivas from the Salesforce community who
Mm-hmm.
contributed few lines and a paragraph to the book.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly, other folks like Simon and all who
Mm-hmm.
contributed some parts to the book. So it was great catching up with them and getting those nuggets of knowledge from them into the book. Also, it
Mm-hmm.
was a great journey inside of knowing myself as an author that, oh, I have this side as well and I can do deep thinking as well. So I think it was good outside and inside.
So how did this whole thing started? Who bought the idea?
I think it started in peer pressure. So some of my friends were writing a book
Okay.
and I have a knack for writing. I've done blogs and technical content earlier. And interestingly, some of the folks whom I know in my very close circle had written a book or were publishing one. So I got really inspired. That inspiration lasted only till chapter one because then I realized, oh my God, I've got really deep into this.
Right.
This thing becomes real.
Yeah, I've been through this process. You start hating the editor. You send one chapter, you feel happy, then the revisions come, and then you go back and forth and back and forth. So how
Yeah.
much
So,
time it did take? Sorry.
yeah, when I was just starting that, it took me an year. And then I read this quote that every book writing project starts like a baby monster. So it is cute and furry when it is small. Then it becomes bigger and bigger, sucking out your blood. And then one
Right.
day you just like throw it out that, yeah, I'm done with
Yeah,
this
I'm
monster.
done. Right, right. So now talking about your book for the end users, who is it for? Like, what's the title and who is the target audience?
Yeah, definitely. So it's called Ultimate Selenium WebDriver for Test Automation. Please do check it out on Amazon or on orangeva.com.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it has Selenium and elements of testing. Read it. I'm a big proponent of feedback. If you find something is odd or awesome, let me know. It is definitely targeted towards somebody who's curious about Selenium and test automation. It has nothing to do with the experience because it has surface level chapters and then it has deep technical chapters on how Selenium architecture as an open source project is implemented. It even has
Okay.
chapter 11, which is around Gen AI and testing and automation. So anybody who's curious should check it out. People who are right out of college, 0 to 2 years experience, 0 to 2 years experience in testing and automation is the ideal audience
Mm-hmm.
so that they can not only know about the tool, but then also its internals and then application in enterprise or SaaS systems. So there are anecdotes, personal examples, and data points around using Selenium for Salesforce, ServiceNow, Workday, Oracle, and e-commerce or healthcare applications.
Okay, very nice, very nice. So, do you plan to do second edition of that book? And it's odd question.
I think I'm bound to do revisions
Right, right,
whenever there are major upgrades to the tool or the software. Is there a second edition? Doubtful. We have to see
right.
how life goes and where life takes us.
But yeah, definitely everyone, Robin is coming from a like deep background in QA. You can see from this conversation as well. So I'm sure you will benefit from the book. And by the way, if they have any queries, you say drop feedback. What's the best way to reach you out? LinkedIn or
Yeah, they can reach out to me on LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn as linkedin.com/in/polymorphic Robin.
Mhm.
Or you can also reach out to me on my website, which is robin-gupta.
Okay, very nice. So now, towards the end part of it, what do you do apart from QA and technical stuff? Any hobbies or any books?
Right now, I'm going through a career break. So just exploring various industries, domains, all the application of QA, AI together or separately to these problem statements. Reading is a big passion
Mm-hmm.
and therefore also writing. So that happens contributing back to the community through these conversations, that one-on-one chat, mentoring someone, delivering that one PR, which that open source team hates. So those
Right.
things happen. Or just learning. I actually have taught at an engineering college. So I strongly believe that education will change the world.
Mm-hmm.
So some deep research or where is the AI market going? We should head towards that innovative goal. So that happens in the free time.
Or maybe your own startup.
There is this thread of things happening. We'll see if it becomes the fabric or if they just stay threads.
Right, right. Because these breaks are good. At times you need to cut out of the noise to really think what you really want to do next.
Yeah. Exactly. And to your earlier point, not look at the solution that, oh, let's do this one AI thing. Look at the problem statement. That is where the beauty is. You should really obsess over that problem statement and then go deep inside it. And that can only happen when you take a break.
True, true. I think it was a pleasure talking to you, Robin. And I mean, I was not hoping for that kind of deeper conversation, but I really loved it. And I hope my audience will also enjoy it. Any last words for the QA community and Salesforce community?
I think I'll just copy it again. It's very simple. Stay hungry, stay foolish. Uh,
Mm.
just have that fire inside you.
Perfect. Thank you, Robin. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you, sir.